assignment 2, I've chosen to utilise the article Guerrilla Warfare as Women Activists Don the Mask for the Art's Sake by Carly Northover, which appeared in the Sydney Morning Herald on the 15th of May 2012. The article centres around the work of the Guerrilla Girls, a group of feminist activists based in New York who have been actively promoting feminism and women's rights in the arts industry since 1985. Recently, 2 of the founding members were in Australia to hold a one-night-only public lecture in Melbourne to discuss the current developments in the equalisation of women's rights in the arts industry. The group are quite famous for using humour to achieve their message of equal rights in the arts, performance, television and movie industry. The utilisation of multimedia messages is usual communication for the group, and to date, all of its members still remain masked. In other words, they wear gorilla masks. In protest to the lack of female artists that the Museum of Modern Arts in New York had commissioned, for example, one exhibition had 169 artists, yet only 17 of those were female. The group created a now infamous poster with the slogan, "Do women have to get naked to get into the Met?" to promote the point that less than 3% of the artists in the Met Museum were female, but 83% of the nude paintings in the museum were of a female form. This poster is actually now hanging in the Met Museum as part of its feminism category. Although there have been certain improvements in the equality of women in the art industry, the industry still has a rate of under 20% of female artists to be commissioned and exhibited. The 2 activists are also speaking with Australian art galleries while they're here to discuss the further promotion of female Australian artists. The article touches on the notion of gender difference in society. Although biologically each person is born either male or female, it is a socially agreed upon assumptions that eventually allow us to form our collective identity. In Lecture 4, Andrew Hickey explores the idea that although gender is the most obvious form or axis of identity, the role that gender plays actually precedes birth through the parents, for example, finding out the sex of the baby and then choosing a gender-specific name. Although it is important to point out that more recently it is more acceptable to have a gender-neutral name. Another form of this is also once the parents find out the sex of the child to decorate the nursery, and that is of course in gender-specific colours as well. However, as the child becomes older, there is an opportunity for it to form its own sense of self and identifying the things that they just aren't and identifying with what they are comfortable with. In Lecture A, John Austin explains the zone of difference. For example, in the article mentioned, they're discussing male and female artists. As a future educator, I'm hoping that educating children about the assumptions and stereotyping that occurs within the gender axis, that we can close the difference distance, to be a much smaller one. Although there have been quite a majority of identity transformation for women, as mentioned in Lecture 9, there is still quite a distance in the zone of difference due to the collective societal opinion about male and female roles within society. Many modern feminists argue that the media has done nothing to help the situation, as shown in the YouTube example of current television commercials. If you were to deconstruct, as we have been taught to by the course text, Culture and Identity, a recent media advertisement for example, you would find that there is still a collective assumption about the roles that males and females play in society, as for example with the article where it's more acceptable for a male artist to be published or exhibited than the female artists. It is therefore crucial as a future educator to ensure that children are given the right tools to form their own sense of identity and allow them to see that they can associate with varying forms of gender, and to teach children a sense of tolerance through the social transformation that is happening. Welcome teachers and educators to this, our first webisode in the series, Axis of Identity, What Does It Mean in the Classroom? How did these webisodes come about? Well, let me tell you. Recently in the media there have been a number of issues highlighting the axis of identity, such as gender, class and race topics, that have seen the opinion of many expressed This is bound to have been discussed in the homes across Australia and will impact so many children's perceptions of these issues based on the collective identity that they are forming for themselves as we speak. As educators, we have the chance to give children an opportunity to look at differing points of view instead of the dominant one and allow for them to form their own ideas and opinions of their axis of identity. Today's webisode will actually be focusing on gender. Although this is of course the most obvious of the axes, it is one of the most topical ones currently in the media. With current media talking about, for example, the rate of female artists to male artists in galleries, and the fact that most recently at Cannes it's come to light that none of the voters for the festival are actually female, they're all male, it's providing fuel to the fire of gender equality. The article I mentioned above is an excellent example of the inequalities that women still face in media industries, where, for example, there is still under 20% of female artists represented in galleries across the world. As in Tracy Emin's film, Institutional Sexism in Art, modernist education plays such an important part in constructing ideas of modernism feminism. With most children visiting a museum or art gallery by the age of 10, it is crucial that the stereotyping that has been mentioned in this article around male and female artists be explained to children so that they can form their own opinion. As a teacher, you play a crucial part in transforming the child's identity in relation to gender, and I'm going to give you some school activities to help you with this. This is where you, as an educator, come into play. I've been in the classroom. I grew up as a dancer, so I was very fortunate enough to be exposed to quite a wide variety of gender. We had male dancers and female dancers, so for myself personally, I understand how crucial it is as an educator to inform children about this early. Today I'm going to give you 3 examples of how, for example, in an early years classroom, years 1 to 2 and maybe even 3, you can explore the idea of gender, the stereotypes that can occur, and develop these ideas so that children can form their own collective understanding of what gender is. This is all done by utilising art and literature, drawing influence from the article that I mentioned earlier. The learning outcome of the first activity is for students to gain an understanding of gender roles by recognising that some jobs are usually done by one gender but can actually be done by the other gender as well. The materials that you'll need for this activity is a range of pictures from magazines or internet sources of people doing everyday jobs, and then of people doing non-traditional jobs, for example, a female truck driver. Try and pick non-traditional roles that are close to your location. I'm located in central Queensland, so for me, a female truck driver would be an excellent example and relevant to local children. You'll also need basic art supplies such as paper, pens, and labels for the children. Working individually, ask children to choose what they want to be when they grow up. Very simple. Get them to draw a picture of themselves in this role and then label the drawing with the actual title of the role, so policewoman or policeman. Once this is done, on the board you'll have a set of 3 categories: male, female, and both. Going around the class, ask each child to come up to the board and stick their picture under the category that they think the job belongs in: male, female, or both. Once it's done, the result is usually very stereotypical because of the exposure they've had to gender. You'll find that they'll have male in the male job, female in the female job, and very few in the both job. Ask the children to think about each role that's up there. Did any child have the same as each other? If a male and a female child have got the same, excellent form of discussion there. You can discuss with the class, did they think that both sexes were able to do that job? Once you've discussed it a bit, show the children the pictures you prepared of people in the non-traditional roles and start a discussion around this. Get each child to now choose a role that's non-traditional to them. So the male children choose one that would be stereotypically a female role, and the female children choose a male role. Get them to redraw it. Get them to draw themselves in that role and label it again. As a side project, you could also get the child to create a job poster or an ad that shows that job with 2 or 3 different people doing it. What you want to see here is a child actually drawing a male and female both doing the same job. This lesson shows children that in this postmodern society, there has been a breakdown in the stereotyping of gender and that anyone can be what they want to be. In the second lesson, you're going to revisit those drawings again. With this lesson, you will need library time, so please save this one for the times that you are allocated to the library or for research time. You'll also need butcher's paper again and art supplies. Start a discussion around things like, was it hard when we started to talk about a male and female doing this role? Why? Why wasn't it? Thinking about these roles, when you as a child watch television or read books, is there usually one type of gender in a role? For example, is the hero a male? Is the female always the damsel in distress? Using that school library research time or classroom time, get the children to break into groups and assign each group a non-traditional role. So for example, you can have 4 groups with 4 different topics, such as a female truck driver, a male flight attendant, a female cricket player, and a male ballet dancer. Using the library time, get the children in their groups to research a famous person in that role. What you want them to do is, using the butcher's paper, is to create an identity poster. Who was this person? What did they do? Were they the first person to ever do that for their gender? The lesson outcome for this is to show students that through media, you can research about stereotypical boundaries that have been broken, and that it's okay if they want to achieve this because someone has already done it before them. In the third lesson, which adds on from this, we'll continue to discuss the roles that we see on television and books, which you touched on in lesson 2. Again, you will need art supplies again, basic paper, pens, butcher's paper as well. You'll need 3 children's stories for this activity, such as Snow White, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty. Split the children into 3 groups and let each group read with parent helpers or by themselves or with you the story. Learners will then examine the concept of characters' gender in this analysis, as this will help them identify bias in the story. Again, is the hero always a male? Is the character that's in distress always a female? Ask children to then see if they change the gender of the main character, would the story still work? So for example, Cinderella becomes Cinderfella. What changes would they have to make to get that story to work? In their groups, get them to work through this. Get them to rewrite the story so that the gender now works. What this does is allows children to see that there is no stereotypical boundaries in children's stories. The male can be the person that needs rescuing just as much as the female. All of these lessons are introducing children to the concept of gender and stereotyping using art and literature in the classroom. You are helping the child explore the concepts without assumptions to show young children that it is up to them to gather their own thoughts about collective identities. You're giving them a wide range of tools to be able to think, I can do that if that person's done it before. Thank you so much for watching this week's webisode. Next week I'll be presenting on how to tackle the race axis in the classroom, which can be a touchy subject. Remember, difference is just that, difference. It's not dominant. Till next time.